I decided that I was not going to allow the legacy of these great artists and musicians, and especially the ones that didn't make it to stardom, I was not going to let them down. I was going to do something to keep their heads held high. And that's what I did with this little museum. Because now it's being known around the world, not just here in Nashville.
Nashville's musical legacy extends far beyond the mainstream country narrative. Tucked away in North Nashville, the Jefferson Street Sound Museum stands as a testament to the rich cultural heritage of jazz, soul and rhythm and blues that thrived from the 1940s through to the 70s. Founded and curated by Lorenzo, Washington, this museum isn't just a collection of artefacts. It's a living, breathing continuation of the African American music and community that shaped generations. We're talking about artists like Jimi Hendrix, Etta James, James Brown, Little Richard, Peggy Gaines, Jimmy Church, Frank Howard, Jackie Chaun, Ike and Tina Turner, and so many more, when they played the many clubs that lined Jefferson Street alongside the local enterprises that provided everything you need to sustain a community. That was until around a half a century ago, when the construction of Interstate 40 displaced more than 1,000 black residents, destroyed a business and cultural district on Jefferson Street that was thriving against the odds, and cut the neighbourhood in half. Lorenzo tells of how black museums start in the kitchen, literally, and his was no different. What he thought might last a year or so has since grown to consume his entire house, win multiple awards, and spawn a new generation of folk taking up the mantle. The brilliant short film on PBS, Exit 207, opens with Lorenzo walking astride young leader Carlos Partee, founder of the Nashville Black Market, just part of the cultural and economic resurgence on and around Jefferson Street. And Lorenzo's open mic nights, recording studio, community events, conversations with legends and more continue to not just preserve a legacy, but create one. G'day, Etta James here for The Regeneration, your independent listener-supported podcast, exploring how people are regenerating the systems and stories we live by, with thanks to new subscribers on Substack, Rowena Morrow and Gabrielle Mann, thanks sister, and to the good men clocking up 3 years of treasured support on Patreon, Mike Moritz, Ruben Parker-Greer, Rob Scott and John McPherson. If you've been thinking about joining this brilliant community of supporting listeners and readers, I'd love you to. For as little as $1 a week, with benefits if you like, you can help keep the show on the road. Subscribe free or paid on Patreon or Substack. Just follow the links in the show notes. And thank you. When I met up with this dapper, funny, humble and still sprightly 82-year-old at the museum, he was gearing up for the annual gala on April 3 in honour of what is now Lorenzo Washington Day in Nashville, Tennessee. We're greeted at the door by the museum's VP, Karen Coffey, before being joined by Lorenzo, and we end up with a song produced for him at the museum by Nashville's Queen of the Blues, Marion James. I've been hanging out to bring you this one. Let's head to Jefferson Street. Alright, just arrived at the museum. You can tell by my backdrop of sound. Gives you a little hint what destroyed the scene of Jefferson Street. But we'll hear more about it from the man himself. Hey, Karen.
Hey, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. Lorenzo's right here. Hello?
Thanks for squeezing me in.
Yeah. You're the last that we're doing.
There we go, cool.
He's in there. He probably want to start in here, though.
Yeah.
I'll lay a paper there for you. If you want to take that back to Australia.
Oh, cool, thank you.
Yeah.
Great, thanks for thinking of that.
And then it has the ad about the gala.
Wonderful. How's the gala shaping up?
Oh, it's done deal.
Oh, cool.
It's everywhere. It's Scene Magazine. Did you see Scene Magazine?
I haven't yet. No.
A Scene Magazine.
Yeah. They've got a podcast too, Scene.
Oh yeah. So the podcast just came out with us.
It did.
With their last podcast.
Great.
Did you see it?
I'm going to have a listen. I've been reading the book.
Well, the podcast just came out 2 hours ago.
2 hours ago. Oh,
2
wow.
hours ago.
There you go.
Yeah, it's an interview with Neil Lorenzo. The
Uh-huh.
podcast from
Mr.
Scene.
Washington.
All right.
Yeah.
How you doing, Ted?
Good, mate. How are you?
Yeah.
Good.
It's a
Good.
pleasure to see you again.
Yes, sir.
Thanks for squeezing me in. I know you're really busy.
It's been a little busy, though,
Yeah.
especially during the month of February.
Yeah, really.
March. February,
No,
March.
we're not March now. Well, February and March.
Yeah,
But we've been pretty busy.
yeah. I hear you. It sounds good though.
Yeah.
Lorenzo, this is where we met the other day at the
Right.
entrance to the museum at the famed Jefferson Street Sound tree. Let's welcome listeners in like you welcomed us in that day, hey?
Yeah. Well, to start off, and I always like starting off saying, this was my home. This wasn't a museum in the beginning. This is where I lived. And I turned my home into a museum, like one room at a time, until now it's swallowed up my whole house. I've got one room in the back that I live in.
So, did you pick this up after it had been a boarding house?
Oh yeah, much further down the road. When it was a boarding house, it was in the 50s and 60s when some of the artists and musicians that went to Tennessee State, and that was around here. But now the main thing, Tennessee State did not have enough boarding for all of the students, for the music students. So they came out into the community and rented larger houses and put the kids in the rooms in these large houses. And then after that, boarding houses. So we had boarding houses all up and down Jefferson Street and in the North Nashville community.
I'm imagining that was part of the magic of the place.
Yeah. Well, it brought a closeness to the musicians and the artists that lived in these boarding houses, because they hung out at night, and sang and played and wrote music together. So it was a lot of that going on in these boarding houses here in the city. And this was one of them. Now, like Hank Crawford was a saxophone player, and Hank Crawford got picked up by Ray Charles. So actually, Ray Charles has been in this house to pick up his saxophone player to go on tour to do gigs. So Ray Charles has spent some time in this house.
It's fitting that this should happen to become the museum ultimately when it's got that sort of a backdrop. But what was the moment for you where you thought, I've got to do this?
Well, that I've got to do this museum now. I was inspired by Miss Marion James and some of the other older artists to do this museum thing, because they was coming here to rehearse and to jam. I had a room over here that was a rehearsal hall, and I would allow them to come in and rehearse and jam, because they were getting older and they weren't getting the gigs, like that's what they called it, gigs.
Yeah, even in my day, that was true.
They weren't getting the gigs like they were. So I would allow them to come over and hang out here in my spot. Now, when they would finish, they would come over here in my apartment. And this part of the building was my apartment. And they would come over here and sit around, and maybe have a beer or two and just talk trash about what they did and who they played with. Because Jimi Hendrix played in Marion James's band at one time.
Oh, did he really?
Yeah,
Wow.
He played behind my best friend Herbert Hunter, at one time. So at one time, Jimmy would just be getting gigs with whoever he could get gigs with in order to pay his rent, you know. And I used to see Jimmy walk up and down this street here, which is Jefferson Street, walk up and down this street with his guitar on his shoulder and just moseying around up Jefferson Street and down Jefferson Street because he lived 5 blocks down the street. And he worked 6 blocks down the street. So his home, the building he lived in, which was a boarding house again, upstairs was the boarding area, and downstairs it was a beauty school, Joyce's House of Glamour. And Jimmy lived upstairs. Him and Billy Cox had a room. Had rooms upstairs. You know, it was a house like this.
Yeah.
And so they lived right down the street. So you could see Jimmy up and down Jefferson Street any time. Billy Cox had a little poodle, and he used to be walking his little dog up and down Jefferson Street, so you could see. And he had a little monkey. Had a little monkey. And he'd walk this little monkey even up and down Jefferson Street, you know. So it was a lot going on. Everybody claimed Jefferson Street, you know. Everybody had stories about Jefferson Street, on Jefferson Street, and everybody that touched Jefferson Street, put their footprints on Jefferson Street, was proud. This was a proud community here on Jefferson in North Nashville.
Well, there's a display right now in the Country Music Hall of Fame that we went to yesterday on Jefferson Street. I think they're calling it the Night Train to Nashville
Night Train
exhibit. And in that, they've got a passage from Jimmy where he says he really learned how to play guitar here.
Here on Jefferson, not on Jefferson, on Jefferson Street, because Johnny Jones was a guitar player. And Johnny, you know, told me this story himself, that he had a job at a little club up there in Clarksville, and Jimmy was in the Army at the time. He was a paratrooper at Fort Campbell, and he used to come down to this little club that he worked at, Johnny Jones worked at, and sat around and listened to him. And he said, like in Seattle, they didn't have the blues. The blues wasn't in Seattle. So Jimmy could play, but he couldn't play the blues. And when he met up with Johnny Jones and found out that Johnny Jones was in Nashville, right after he got released from the service, he came to Nashville following Johnny Jones. And Johnny Jones said that he hung around him a lot. And that's how he learned how to play the blues, is hanging around Johnny Jones. But when he got good enough, he thought he was good enough to challenge Johnny Jones in a battle. and Johnny Jones beat him in the guitar battle.
I hear this.
And Johnny said that he was already set up in the Club Baron right down the street.
One's still there, yeah?
It's still there, yeah. He said he was set up in the club to play a gig that night, and Jimmy came in with one of his buddies talking trash, that he was ready. Yeah, I'm ready for you. I'm ready. And his buddy was talking more trash than Jimmy, you know. and Johnny said, I told him to come on up and plug in. And he brought his little amp. He said he had a little amp, and he brought the amp up and set it up and plugged in. And he said they got started, And Johnny said, I had two big old speakers with two 15-inch woofers in them. And Jimmy had this little box with, looked like might have had a couple of 12s in it or something. And he said when we got started, he said, I like to blow him out of the water because I was loud, much louder than he was. And plus, I'm an aggressive player. And so he said, I beat him. He said that Johnny Jones said, I got all of the applause because I was good and loud, and I'm good.
And all this is just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, I look behind you on this famous tree that you've set up with, well, not even all the artists, but a lot of the artists that came through, and a lot of the clubs they played at. This street was really full of it.
It was full.
What have we got here?
And these clubs that you see on this tree was the larger ones. It didn't show all of the ones in between these, which was smaller clubs. But we got clubs, I'm going to start over here. We got Price's Dinner Club. Now, Price's, a lot of artists played at Price's. We had Tom Malone, Mary James played there, Christine Cottrell, Benny Lattimore played there. And but one of the main ones that's not on the tree was Fats Domino. Fats Domino, when he would come to Nashville, he'd go right to Price's because they were friends, and he'd always go to Price's. So that was Fats Domino's spot. And over here at the Club Baron is where Little Richard made his home on Jefferson Street. That was the club that he performed at every weekend here.
Marvin Gaye.
Yeah, Marvin Gaye played there. Yeah.
DeFord Bailey. You've got a big stand-up painting here of him as well.
Right.
Otis Redding.
Bobby Blue Bland. And then we had the Black Diamond. The Black Diamond was a club. That building is still standing. It's a restaurant now. But it was sort of like a spillover. You know, it's if everything else was full, you might go by the Black Diamond. That's the way I explains it. That was more like less a spillover there. And then you had the Club Stillaway. Now the Club Stillaway, you might catch Ike and Tina Turner in the Club Stillaway. Aretha Franklin played the Club Stillaway.
Delma Rocco as well, she was performing at.
She performed, all around the different clubs.
Jimmy Church. Oh, Lucius Tully, who we saw here with you the other night.
Yeah, Lucius Spoon, man. Now, Lucius used to be a drummer.
Yeah.
You know, so that's how he got on the map here. It was before he started playing spoons.
Another namesake, Etta James.
Mm-hmm. Now, Etta James cut her first live album at the New Era Club. Right here. Her first live, Rock the House, was the name of that album.
James Brown down there too.
Mm-hmm. Now, when the artists, when they came to Nashville, the first place that most of them wanted to play at is the New Era Club because that's where the local crowd is. You know, the local crowd was at the New Era. And you know you're going to have a packed house every weekend night at the New Era. So when artists come to Nashville, they want to check out the New Era just because of that local crowd. You know, that's where I went, you know, a lot. Back then, that's the first place that I would go, is the New Era Club.
Yeah, magnificent. And then there came a time after this period, the 40s to the 70s, where it came to a screeching halt. To talk about this, what initiated that, why don't we step outside onto the street to get a visceral sense? I mean, listeners are probably hearing some of the traffic behind us, but that's just...
Yeah, but that was
Jefferson
Street. You know, you had traffic, siren, and all of that was on Jefferson Street.
So as we step outside onto Jefferson Street now, let's follow that thread and talk about what changed in the 70s.
Yeah. Now, we're here on Jefferson Street, and the name of this museum is the Jefferson Street Sound, and that covers all of the sounds that may have taken place or that was here on Jefferson Street. Now, you have to imagine over 600 and something homes and businesses up and down the street. So you had people up and down the street, like right there on the corner, used to be a little grocery store right there on the corner. Across the street, it was an instrument, a shop where they sold used instruments. So it was artists and musicians in and out of that shop over there all the time. Right here next door, it was an ice cream parlor. So you had an ice cream parlor there, and you had all of these artists and musicians living in this boarding house right here. So you had all of that kind of action right here. But you had houses next to each other, next door to each other. You had them all the way up Jefferson Street. And you had little kids up and down Jefferson Street. Now you don't see kids on this street. There's no kids, but in the 60s and the 70s and 50s, 60s and 70s, it was just people lined up, all of these students that was up and down Jefferson Street. You had libraries down the street, insurance companies, car dealerships, grocery stores, clothing stores. You had all of that up and down Jefferson Street.
It's funny that development should have been thought of as taking away everything that you've already got and that you need.
But it was planned for them to take away this community.
To put the interstate right through it.
The interstate. Now they didn't even tell the community what they were going to do.
Really?
They didn't warn the community. Now they would go out in the Bellmead area and put up flyers or something to let them know that they are getting ready to cut through Jefferson, cut through North Nashville, but they didn't bring those same flyers and that same information to the actual community.
Yeah, right.
See, so when they came through the community with the bulldozers and the trucks and all of that, the plan had already been made years before. And I heard they started planning this interstate in the 50s, around 55 or something. Now, but they didn't actually start working on the interstate till the early 60s, 63, 64, 5. And in 67, they were driving down the interstate. And they didn't even want to put a ramp, off-ramp, on Jefferson Street, where you had the 3 universities over here still. Most of the clubs were gone. Even in the back of this building, they took the backyard. The backyard went all the way to the alley, and the alley and all of that's gone now.
Yeah, when we pulled up, we're right between the building and the interstate.
Yeah, and the interstate.
So that explains.
See, the interstate went back to the next street. I mean, the backyard.
Yeah.
You had big backyards.
Yeah.
But not now, no more. So with all that was going on, and so just like you hear the traffic here, but you had the only emergency hospital in the black community was right up the street here, Herbert Hospital, and that's the hospital that I was born in. Right here on Jefferson Street. So it was a lot going on and a lot to do here on this street.
Yeah.
So, but the interstate brought the change to Jefferson Street in the early 60s.
Yeah. Let's go back in. We've got the visceral sense of that now, but we'll go back where it's quieter. I can only imagine, Lorenzo, what that felt like at the time, to be ambushed by that sort of a change.
Yeah.
What was the sense in the community then?
Well, we felt that they wanted our community because right after they came through here with the interstate, they didn't do anything to protect the community as far as, they didn't have good police presence. There were garbage, not but trash, on the streets. You didn't see the street sweepers coming through very often, or the prisoners coming through with the brooms and the dustpans. So we were really let down by the lack of attention that this community was getting after the interstate came through here. But the thing is, and I've heard that the plan was for it to be like this today,
Really?
with the tall and skinnies coming up, with the access to the interstate, for the people on the other end of Jefferson Street that has big businesses down there, but they can get to the interstate right down the street here. And that was something that they needed, and they got. They got Jefferson Street, they got the interstate, and they got the community. When I said they, government, the city.
It comes hot on the heels of the civil rights movement that you lived through as well, and I read in your book the other day that your granddad's granddad was a slave, did secure the 40 acres and a mule, unlike many that had it sort of taken back.
But we only got 24 acres.
Did you?
Because they sold off some of the acres.
Oh, there we go. There we go. So your life has also lived through a lot of that marginalisation. How was it for you growing up in that? You've maintained such a positive disposition to people. How did you do that?
Well, when I was a kid, we lived in a neighborhood just across the bridge. It wasn't far away now, a mile and a half. But we lived in a community to where it was black and whites living in the community. Some of our best friends were white kids. They lived in that area that we lived in. It was sort of like it was a rural area, but it was mixed with black and whites. And on this hill up here, some of my best friends, Bubba Fields, that's what his nickname was, Bubba Fields. Their last name was Field. And Bubba Fields and them, they had a horse and some cows and chickens and that kind of stuff on their farm. Little old farm, kind of shabby, but, it was a farm. And we lived down the hill here, and we had a little 4-room house down there. And it was like 7, 8 of us living in that house. And it had a kitchen, so it didn't have but 2 rooms that was considered 3 rooms was considered bedrooms. And then the kitchen. There wasn't no living room or none of that. It didn't have that much space in it. But we lived in that little house on Wichita Street. But Bubba Fields and them up here on this end, we used to go to their house some weekends and spend the night. And then we get up in the mornings, we'd ride the horse and ride the cow and rode the cow. And rode the cow. And he had a little motorcycle, and we'd ride the little motorcycle. So we had a ball up there at Bubba Fields. Now, but Bubba Fields used to love to come to our house and spend the night because of my mother's cooking. She'd cook a big breakfast. She'd have eggs and fried chicken and biscuits, for breakfast. And he loved to come to our house for breakfast. We loved to go to there because he had the cows and the horses.
I should clarify too, biscuits here are what we call scones back home. So people thinking biscuits, they're more like cookies for us. Cookies for breakfast, what? No, they're scones, we call them.
Oh,
thanks to England.
Scones.
Yeah, so scones for breakfast sounds lovely.
Oh,
And
okay.
so a nod to your mother too, because I have to say, like right behind you is almost my favourite feature of this museum.
Yeah,
is
yeah.
her old turntable.
Yeah, this is a turntable here. We call it a record player because it play records.
And it pulls
Because
out.
it play records. And it had a radio also.
Yeah.
And that was an old record player that my mother, you'd go in the house and hear the music. It wasn't no big deal. And that's just what they played music on after we got electricity. Because we didn't get electricity until I was about 12 years old. And when we got electricity, that's when we could play, something like this.
Yeah.
But, and the backwater, man, we remember the backwater would come through every year, and old Bubba Field and them had a boat. They had it was a paddle boat, but they had a boat, when the backwater come about every 3 years.
Yeah.
The backwater would come in, and the backwater would get this high in our house.
Like chest high.
Yeah, chest high in the house, and we'd have to wait until the water go down. And when the water would go down, we'd have to go in and scrub the walls down and the floors and move back in.
This is fascinating because, I take it that's the Cumberland River that would do that,
The
is that right?
Cumberland River.
And what stopped it? Are there dams upstream now? Or?
The dams.
Yeah, it's interesting
because
that's
like
played.
right now down there, they got all of those apartments and
Yes.
housing down there.
Yes.
And we were wondering, well, what are they going to do about the backwater? But they fixed the backwater, downstream.
Yeah.
With the dams and stuff.
Interesting.
So they're not concerned with the backwater because the backwater used to come up and come across Jefferson Street. You couldn't go straight down Jefferson Street. You'd have to turn at 10th and go around and come back down 5th and 6th and get back on Jefferson because the backwater would have part of Jefferson Street cut off.
So, amongst a range of things, what's really interesting to me is that you still describe your childhood as full of love and happiness.
Yeah, but that was just how we were taught. My mother was a kind, good lady, and we picked that up from her. She had me going through the neighborhood, taking care of the little old ladies in the neighborhood, cutting the grass and running to the store for them. So I was doing that at 7, 8 years old, doing for the neighbors, the little ladies, especially the ladies. And so we were taking care of them back when I was 7, 8 years old. So I learned kindness through my mother, and it came with me, right today. If I see a person, especially an older person, in need. Although I'm an older person now.
I was going to say.
I have arrived, But the way I look at it, I don't feel, that older person, So I'm still looking to help.
Well, let's walk through a little bit, hey, and come back to how you arrived. Like you set this up in, what was it, 2011? How you arrived, decades later, thinking, I've got to do this. What was that spark or that compulsion that made you start?
See, Marion James and these older artists was still living.
Yeah.
You know, most of them has died out since I started the museum. And so I was encouraged and inspired, you know, to continue on. And then once most of them passed, then I said, I've got to do it now in order to keep their legacy going. And that's what I did. Even when they came here from the Smithsonian, Mrs. Ruskins, she's up there with Michael Gray with the white shirt on.
Yeah.
Well, he's over the Country Music Hall of Fame. And she's from the Smithsonian in Washington. And they came and they asked me if I could pull some of the artists together that grew up, you know, here on Jefferson Street, grew up performing. And I said, yeah, because I was sort of in touch with them. And so I pulled together this group right here. There's Miss Marion James.
Oh, wow.
She's deceased now. There's Frank Howard. He's still performing. There's Jesse Boyce. Jesse Boyce is deceased now. There's Nick Nixon, and Nick Nixon is deceased now. And there's Clifford Curry. Clifford Curry is deceased. There's D. Ford Bailey. I'm sure you heard of him.
Yeah.
You heard of his daddy is what they're promoting now. And there's pictures of him right there.
Yeah, incredible
And
story.
he's deceased now. And there's Spoon Man.
Spoon Man.
Lucius Spoon Man Talley. And that's Jimmy Church. And there is Don Adams.
Oh, wow.
And this gentleman here, Jimmy Odie. Jimmy Odie was the drummer for not James Brown, Little Richard, for a few years.
Yeah. So you were the conduit for these bigger institutions as well.
Yeah. Even with the African American Museum downtown, I went down and told some of my story, and they brought a whole busload of their people here to learn my stories, you know. And I didn't think I had any stories worth telling that it meant anything until I started doing interviews, and I'm not a good interviewer. I tell folk in a minute, I'm not great at interviewing at all. I just tell my story and hope you take it like it's presented to you, you know, from the heart.
The best kind.
You know.
So you started in 2011, and on that note then, we were talking the other day, I said, did it take off straight away or did it take a bit of time? And you said it took a bit of time, and as much because, like we're talking a few years, and as much because you needed to build your confidence up in the way that you're describing.
Yeah.
And I said, so you started it before you were confident?
Oh, yeah. I was scared to death to get in front of a microphone. You know, that was one of the worst things you could do to me is put a microphone in front of me. You know, but now I have a different kind of confidence. It's not that I feel like I'm good at it or anything. It's that just go on and tell your story.
Yeah.
You know, that's where I'm at now. I just go on and tell, you know, and try to answer the questions as best that I can.
Right on. Okay, so we've moved into this room. Let's bring listeners back into how it feels. We're in this... What was this room? Was this your dining room?
This was my living room.
It was your living room. And
Yeah.
it's full of... I'll put photos up on the website. It's full of these images, some of which you've been referring to. I've got your book to my right here. I've got an extraordinary display here.
Yeah.
That you said was the first item in here, I think, did you? Or one of the first?
That's one of the first articles that I put on the walls. It started with that wall back there, and then this wall.
And how did that come to be here?
Well, because they were the walls that I felt was you could see first when you come in here. This wall was right here where you could see it when you come in the room, and that wall was next to the stairwell here where you go up and down to the studio. And most of these artists on this, people on this wall had something to do with hip hop, the rap music. I had a couple of rappers that I helped promote, and along with Don Adams there. Now Don Adams did the first album that we had here on Jefferson Street. I don't know of another album being cut and released on Jefferson Street before Don Adams.
And that was here in the museum?
That was here in the museum upstairs.
Oh, wow. And now you're getting instruments donated to. It's become a real place where people are giving you more and more things, like these two pianos.
Right. These pianos were donated. The one on that side was donated by Dr. W.O. Smith's daughter, Jackie Smith. And Jackie was a singer, a jazz singer. And she ended up moving from Nashville to California, and she didn't have room for the piano. So she donated the piano to the museum. Now this piano over here was donated by Marion James's cousin, and she wrote her only hit record on that piano. And that hit record was That's My Man, and it was a 45. And she wrote the song playing this piano. And that was the only hit song that she wrote. And
That's an amazing song. Well, so are the rest of them, hits or not.
Yeah,
they're
right.
Amazing catalog.
And she was a romantic singer. You know, she sung about romantic things all the time.
Yeah. And then we cut left into a room that's sort of notable for being full of framed photos and old promotional posters. That's one of Mary and Dave.
This is the room where most of the artifacts are. And most of these artifacts were donated by different artists, and some by friends of artists, you know, that was, and relatives of different artists. Now this vest right here was donated by Jesse Boyce, and Jesse played bass guitar for Little Richard. There's a picture of him up there, and Jesse played with Little Richard for about 20 years. And Jesse Boyce also got picked up by Berry Gordy at Motown. And he ended up leaving Nashville and going to Detroit and playing with Motown, writing for Motown for 4 or 5 years. Matter of fact, that guitar up there on the wall was Jesse Boyce's guitar. And on that guitar, he wrote the song Firefly. And he got a platinum record for that song Firefly that the Temptations recorded.
Yeah, wow.
And he wrote the song on that guitar, and about 3 weeks before he died, he brought that guitar over here and signed it and donated it to the museum. So that's a treasured piece. And Jesse was also one of my business partners when I got into the music in 75.
In the record store?
In the Moses Dillard and Jesse Boyce had a production company, Dillard and Boyce Production, and they were over on Music Row. Matter of fact, they were the first black production company to be accepted on Music Row. And they seeked me out of the community to come and partner with them. So I did. And I was one of the partners. I went from the record store. I had a record store. I went from owning a record store to being a part of the record business. And those guys cut one album, and the album is in there in the case. Cut an album, Saturday Night Band, Come On Dance Dance. They got 2 Grammy nominations.
Yeah, and you were on it.
Yeah.
You wrote a piece.
Yeah, I wrote a piece on the second one.
But you said you had no idea about music.
No, I didn't.
How did you do that?
I didn't have no idea about none of this stuff. But here I am, in a serious conversation about all this stuff.
And you've got awards.
Can
I say they're coming out of your ears now?
Yeah, I've gotten quite a few. Getting ready to go to Knoxville tomorrow to receive another award. I've gotten notoriety from all of this stuff that I'm doing.
You've got a day named after you?
Yeah, got a day named after me. One of the April the 3rd here in Nashville, Tennessee, is my day. It's a given day for Lorenzo Washington Day. Whoever would have expected that kind of stuff,
It must say something. I think it says a lot about our deep appreciation for the stories of our places.
Yeah. And it's all about the stories, what folk want to hear when they come in this little museum. They look at the pictures, but how does it relate to what took place on Jefferson Street? My stories.
Right on. So what happens next with this place then? Where are you heading with it now?
Well, we've got a couple of programs that we've implemented, and the main one that's going to take us forward with the museum and with the stories and with the talent is Seymour, SYMOR. Start your month off right. And that's a feature that we've gotten started here, and it's and we feature different artists, and we have open mic kind of thing, doing part of the Seymour night. And what we're doing is bringing the community, the musical community, back together, through the open mic and the Seymour, and featuring artists, that kind of thing. We do it the first Monday of every month for right now. When it gets warm, we'll take it outside.
And we had the story night, the legacy story night the other night too.
The legacy night, we have it where we are interviewing some of the older artists and getting their story down on tape. So one day we'll be able to play these tapes and let them tell you some of their stories about what took place on Jefferson Street.
I was curious too, because in that conversation you articulated a vision of a dinner club.
Oh yeah, that's my vision. I don't know if nobody else have that vision. Karen may have joined in with me on that vision, but what I'd like to see on this street or in this community is a nice dinner club that would hold about 110, 15 people, and bring in artists from around the country that sing the blues, people that's just getting started, that don't cost you a lot of money, and let them perform some of these old songs that these older musicians would perform, and just have good food and good music back here on Jefferson Street.
Given the reaction to this museum, I can't see how it wouldn't work.
Well, it just takes a bunch of money. It's going to take a few $1 million to buy the properties, and build a building.
But the money's coming in one form or other, isn't it, at the moment? So just a bit of it that way.
Well, just a little enough to keep the stories going.
Yeah, it's a beautiful vision.
Yeah.
And notable, having watched the PBS story Exit 207 about the interstate coming through and transforming this community, but then about your work was also the work of Carlos with the Nashville Black Market. And we went to the Black Market last Friday.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, the first one for the year, apparently, as things are starting to thaw out a bit.
Yeah.
And yeah, the way he was with you on that show too looked like a real, I don't know, is passing of the baton too much to say, but it's a similar ilk. He's gone and set up this black market, African-American market, small business, music, amazing food. It reminded me of the way you described Jefferson Street back then, where there was food, cooking, community, kids on the street. It was that vibe. So sure, now it's over there, but still connected to Jefferson Street too. And there is next generation coming on with this stuff too. Are you seeing a bit of that?
Yeah, well, it's not a lot, but it has to start somewhere. And Carlos has sort of fell into that mold that I'd like to see take place here on Jefferson Street. And you have to have nerve, to step out front, to do these things that we're doing, to try to revive the community, the street. And I'm not just saying the street, I'm saying the community, because now we've got Buchanan up here, and Buchanan is they're investing more in that street because it was more property. It was more real estate, over there on Buchanan than it was on Jefferson Street, because here on Jefferson Street, you got the interstate backed right up to the properties over here on Jefferson Street. So you don't have the footage, going back, just like back here.
Yeah.
It stops right there. Now, you couldn't put a parking lot back there. You can park 4 or 5 cars, and then they're going to catch the blues getting out of there if it's that many, So you just have to be careful how you spend your money when you come over here on Jefferson, and you have to have a lot of nerve to come over here and invest, because you're going to have some years before you recoup your first money, It's going to take you 3 or 4 years to establish yourself and to a point of making a profit. Now, can you afford those 3 or 4 years?
It seems like a small price to pay for what you gain. And I'm looking at you, having transformed your house into this and seeing what it's flowering, that you had that patience.
Yeah, but instead of it taking 3 or 4 years, it took 13 years.
Yeah.
But I have lived through those 13 years. I have lived past those 13 years. And so that's why I'm able to stand here and talk to you, because I endured.
Would you do it again? Or are there key lessons or pieces of advice out of your experience?
Yeah, if I was the age that I was 13 years ago, I would say yeah. But being that I'm 13 years older than those years, I probably would say no.
Yeah, if it was now.
Yeah, I probably would say no. But
there was a bigger drive for you. There was a bigger call. It just had to be done.
Yeah. I felt that in my heart, that it needed to be done.
And as you went then, you found a way.
Yeah, I found a way,
How do you explain that?
Now that I can't explain. That I can't explain.
Really.
Endurance,
I'm really interested in this bit that you can't explain. Because this is a common story, right? People just feel that they've got to do it, and they do their thing. It turns out incredible, inspires so many people. And then other people are sitting there going, oh, I couldn't do it. I couldn't do what I'm thinking of, though. It'd be pretty hard. I'd have to be in it for years before any money came back or whatever.
Right. Now, a couple of my friends, they one of them bought them a new Corvette, one of them bought them a Lexus, and one of them lives in one of these tall and skinnies overlooking downtown. Now, I say, that could have been me.
Yes, exactly.
I could have afforded that at one time.
Yeah.
But I chose to grind it out here in this little museum. I decided that I was not going to allow the legacy of these great artists and musicians, and especially the ones that didn't make it to stardom, I was not going to let them down. I was going to do something to keep their heads held high. And that's what I did with this little museum. Because now it's being known around the world, not just here in Nashville, not just here in North Nashville. It's gone from just the folk around here knowing about it to now you spreading the word in Australia. And it's been spread in Europe, in France, in Canada, in Mexico. So it's being spread all around now. And we're going now, they're calling us to come to different places to pick up these different awards. And so now we're being awarded for keeping this museum alive and keeping the people in this museum alive.
Yep. As I stand here, I feel like I'm surrounded in riches. So here's to that. To close, Lorenzo, extremely fitting in this context, I actually ask my guests, what music would we go out with after this conversation? Is there a piece that stands out in your mind right now, or something that's been with you for a long time, maybe when you were a kid?
Well, the piece now that goes out is Back in the Day that Etta James sung, and it's about Jefferson Street.
Brilliant. We've been listening to Marion since we were here on Saturday.
But you hadn't heard this one on Marion,
I'm gonna look
Back
that one
in the
up.
Day. And it sings about the clubs. Let me see if I can come up with something here, just to give you a quick listen.
Great.
Yeah, can I tell you a story about Nashville, Tennessee? That's history on a road they named Jefferson Street. Back in the day, that was all the gold. Gateway, Jefferson Street, jazz and blues, that is the road. Up in Jefferson, you could stop at Good Jelly Jones, you could get a little moonshine, beer, and wine. Ann's Club, you could slide on in there, have a good time. Back in the day, that was all the gold. Jefferson Street, jazz and blues, that is the road. Back in the day, oh Lord, that was all ago. Twelfth and Jefferson, you could stop at Stoop and eat a little barbecue. Right across the street now, y'all, you can have a good time at Cozy Corner too. Ease on down, the club's still awake. Johnny Jones and Jimmy Church just began to play. Brown's Dinner Club, Charles Dungeon played his bass. Sounds so good that y'all kinda wanna get up, shake up the man's place. Back in the day, that was all the gold. Gateway, Jefferson Street, that is the road. In the day, back in the day, back in the day, oh Lord, that was all ago. From Fish University to TSU, you could have a ball at Club Demaraca too. Jimi Hendrix, Billy Cox on bass, Island Boy Sam, not letting the music go to waste. Club Baron, Otis Redding, Little Richard too. Bruce Hayes, having a Sunday jam just for you. Don't forget Earl Price, behind the green door. When they played, everyone hit the floor. Back in the day, as we stand in the day. Jefferson Street Jazz and Blues. Back in the day, oh yeah, that was all ago. One more time now. Ain't talking about Louis Brooks playing.
She's gonna meet some Jackie Shane too, really.
Jefferson Street, Interstate 40, push Club Demaraca away. Back in the day, that was all the girls. Back in the
What album is that off?
This is a single that she did for me.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And we produced it right here upstairs. She couldn't go up the steps when she did this, so she sat right in there beside the table And we brought microphones downstairs to her, and she recorded it sitting right in there in that room.
No way.
Yeah.
That's brilliant.
And we brought a band in, different band members.
Oh, the band was great. That's amazing, Lorenzo. I'm so glad you played that.
Yeah.
Well, Lorenzo, I can't thank you enough.
All right.
I love what you guys are doing.
Thank you.
Thanks for speaking with me.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
That was Lorenzo Washington, founder and curator of the Jefferson Street Sound Museum. I've put a bunch of photos on the website and of course various links in the show notes. As usual, I'll have more for paid subscribers on Patreon and Substack soon, and great thanks for making it all possible. You can join these great people by heading to the website or the show notes and following the prompts. The music you're hearing is Regeneration by Amelia Barden. My name's Anthony James. Thanks for listening.